The change can include things like the person becomes hypervigilant, is easily startled, has trouble thinking, has trouble sleeping, so their body is in a state of agitation. It can also include changes in mood that would include irritability, difficulty relating to others, and that they might be resistant to trust easily. So those are all features.
They have trouble sleeping sometimes.
Yes.
Sleep deprivation is a real issue.
It's associated with things like nightmares and having trouble settling.
Now, you mentioned that you had diagnosed him with depression. Can you just give us a general understanding for the jury of depression?
So the persistent sad mood, including feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, having difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, changes in appetite, those would be typical of depression.
And Sarah Boone suffered from that?
Near the time of the offense, yes.
All right, can you explain to the jury alcohol use disorder? That's a fairly new name. That's 5 or 6 years ago. The manual came up with a different name.
It did, right. And so that would be, in layman's terms, you might call that alcoholism. It's a tendency to drink too much and then have some kind of consequence in your life as a result of your substance use.
And alcoholism can be depending on how much you drink and then how often you drink.
That's right.
All that is something that you would consider in diagnosing?
Yes.
The many people who suffer from alcohol use disorder, I don't know how to put this, are they in denial?
I would say that is one of the stages of alcohol use disorder and amenability to treatment. So in denial, it's because you do not want to acknowledge that there are consequences from your use, because in doing that, you might have to reduce how much you're using. So to deny means that you feel that you can continue your use without having to change that. So you want to maintain the access to the substance.
You don't have a problem.
That's right.
What is the difference between traits and a diagnosis?
Well, we all have personalities, and so you're going to have coping mechanisms that include personality styles. So for instance, even though you might not be diagnosable as something, there are times when if you're upset, hurt, frustrated, you have a mood state that's unpleasant, you're going to deal with that by using some kind of coping mechanism. So traits of personality disorders might be present in the way that you deal with inner pain, things that you don't like, feeling. So some people, for instance, if they feel uncomfortable, they may cling too much or become excessively bonded to try to escape a feeling that they don't like. And that might be a dependent personality trait. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a personality disorder, because that would have to be pervasive across all the environments. But when stressed or upset or not feeling good, you're going to use some kind of coping mechanism, and that might be one of the criterion, for instance, of the personality disorder. You would call that a trait.
Hello, darling.
And
I agree.
That this trauma that one suffers
This is the nail in the coffin, Tracy, I think.
Can cause one to be considered suffering from the syndrome, we call it battered spouse or battered woman syndrome.
Yes. So the diagnosable condition would be PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's how a clinician would label the response to trauma. The pattern between partners, the person's coping mechanism because of that trauma, that would be what's considered battered spouse or battered partner syndrome.
And you're aware that concept of being traumatized by the battered spouse syndrome or the post-traumatic stress is relevant to a self-defense case.
Yes.
In a criminal context.
Yes, I understand that.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, under the battered spouse syndrome, the person would experience a trauma or a situation in which they feared harm. And based on that fear of harm, they would react in a certain way that might not be understandable to other people. So their fear is based on the pattern of behavior between them and their partner. That might not be the case for another set of people.
Now, I know that Dr. Lenore Walker is the one who first uncovered this syndrome back in the 70s.
Her research study generated